Masila. I am the Executive Director of the Eastern Africa Grain Council, EAGC, in the Eastern Africa region of the African continent. The Eastern Africa Grain Council is a regional membership organization for grain value chain stakeholders, and the members of EAGC include grain traders, grain farmers, producers of grain, grain processors, and we also have members who are associate who provide services and solutions to the sector. As an organization, we exist to serve our members, to create an enabling environment, policy environment, so that our members' businesses can run well with minimum disruptions, and also so that the legal and the regulatory framework is more supportive rather than being inhibitive to trade. We also do trade linkages for our members, particularly cross-border trade, and we do solutions to improve trade. We provide market information. We have a data collection system and network where we monitor market prices and cross-border trade and report on a daily basis to our members. We also do training and capacity building of our members so that they can become good professionals in structured commodity trade. Today, we are pleased to join you to discuss this very important topic about data and data needs around informal cross-border trade and looking at how it affects gender. So the first item I will discuss is the challenges of gender equality in trade in Africa, looking at our experience at EAGC, because we are very much involved in trade. We are essentially a trade facilitation organization. And in the work we do, we have both men and women being involved in trade. And so when you look at how trade is structured, both formal trade and also informal trade, and more so trade that involves cross-border transactions, we have noted that over the years, there's always this gender inequality and this issue where women, because of the social norms, because of the cultural aspects about life, we find that women get very disadvantaged starting from the time they are girls. So you find the girl child from birth going to school and eventually going into the labor market and going into trade. Their opportunities are normally limited. In some communities, they are not even taken to school properly. The families don't feel that it's an important thing to educate, to invest in the girl child, and that has brought a lot of inequality and those kind of challenges to the gender, to the female gender. So we've seen, particularly when you're looking at cross-border trade in food items, because of that fact that most of the women or majority of the women don't get full opportunity even to go through school, to go through formal education, they end up turning to the most nearest enterprise that they can do, and this is usually trade. So we have noted in most of the cross-border trade activities in most of the African countries, the majority of the cross-border traders are actually women, and they are women because this is the one opportunity that they are able to get because of the disadvantages they get when you look at their potential entry into the other sectors. And then when you now find them operating and doing their trade across the borders, we also notice some very specific challenges to the women gender in terms of, number one, the facilities at the border points usually don't consider the fact that there are women who will be working across there, and therefore you will not find facilities that are supportive to the women, including even things like sanitation and those kind of facilities. Secondly, information becomes quite a challenge for the women to access, to know what's required in the market, and they also suffer inordinate amount of effects around corruption and even insecurity. Being women, they end up being harassed by the border security officials, and therefore they sometimes even get their wares taken away from them. And because they cannot physically defend themselves, it becomes a big challenge. So we've seen in most cross-border trade activities. Like I've mentioned, you have the women being the majority, and they are not there by choice. It's very much by default. And as you find them there, they then are operating in an environment that is not supportive to them, and they end up suffering much more challenges compared to their counterpart. And this is a big issue when you look at the trade aspects and the gender inequalities around trade. Now, when then you try to come up with some interventions, some solutions around that, we have noted that there's need for data, because you will realize that a lot of the informal cross-border trade ends up not being recorded at all. Formal trade, because you have the documentation, you have got the clearing happening at the borders by the clearing agents. That data is available through the National Bureaus of Statistics, and it's there in official trade statistics. However, informal cross-border trade data is hardly available, particularly when the harassment gets to a level where these informal cross-border traders, majority of whom are women, find it hard to even walk across with their wares on the across the formal border points. They end up to find other channels, other informal channels that they can utilize to pass, and as a result, their trade data, that trade data is not at all picked. And this leads to an understatement of the national trade statistics because of the fact that this data is not collected. And secondly, majority of the traded products across the border informally by the women traders mainly are agricultural products. And so if we then don't get this data coming in, then that means that we don't have good data of our food items, and therefore our food balance sheets, if you are to do any construction of it, would be not well populated in data, and it will not give the right picture. And therefore, part of the data needs and solutions that we recommend to be considered, one is data on the various items, commodity items that are being traded across the border in terms of whether they're agricultural or non-agricultural, whether they are services. It's important that that is captured. And then it's important that it's captured on both sides of the border so that we're able to do a correlation to see that the flow in from source to destination is well recorded. And this needs to be done in a consistent way so that after we have been able to register or to record this volume of cross-border trade in terms of the commodities, the items, then we can supplement the formal data to be able to know exactly how much trade is taking place, and also data on who are these people who are doing the trade. So being able to profile them by gender, profile them by age, profile them by other factors is an important data need that needs to be collected. And then it's also important to collect it over a longer period of time so that you're able to pick the differences in seasons, in seasonality, and when you plot your supply and your demand, and you plot your demand curve, then you are able to see the movement of prices from one harvest to the other, and you can see the interventions that are brought in by injecting produce harvested across the border to the other receiving country, so that then you are seeing how the interplay of demand and supply is playing and is affecting the prices and the availability of food, so that we are able to have food that is accessible, you're able to have it affordable, you're able to have it also acceptable in terms of the handling. And so we, EAGC, in partnership with the UNECA, carried out a project about 3 years ago in West Africa, where we monitored quite a number of borders in the Abidjan-Lagos corridor. And here we developed tools, and we trained the teams, and we were able to upload the data collection systems into a tablet. And we had teams at the borders collecting this data, and we collected it over a period of about 2 months. And it was interesting to see the kind of information we were able to pick and the feedback that we got. And this data was shared, and we were able to demonstrate that, number one, there is significant trade happening, and it is informal trade, and majority of these traders are women. And we were able to capture and feature the key challenges to the women, particularly from a gender lens. We were able to establish that women in doing cross-border trade have unique challenges that affect them because of the gender. One of them was the issue of transport and logistics. The other one was the issue of finance. We found out that most of the finance products are not at all geared to women. They are not done in such a way that the women access to these services will be much more. Thirdly, we also noted some major capacity gaps in terms of them understanding market requirements, specifications for the buyers, and even how to be able to handle their produce so that they maintain the quality as they move it across the borders. We also established a very big need for knowledge. First of all, knowledge on how to conduct cross-border trade. And we realized that most of the women, if they are equipped with the knowledge of knowing how to package, how to even do the basic documentation, including such things like simplified trade regime, if they would be taken through, they would understand how to do it, they could easily transition their businesses from informal businesses to formal businesses by being able to fill in those documents and do the border clearing the way it's supposed to be, because we found out that some of them just avoid the intimidation at the border point and find other routes to use. Only that if they had the information, they'll be able to formally fill in the required paperwork and get in the required documentation. Finally, we also found out that there was a very big need for the women cross-border traders to understand the quality and standard specifications for the produce that they're involved in trading in. On interviewing them and collecting the data across the border, some of them were not aware that there were standards to begin with. They did not know that there were standards in place for grains, for cereals, for various produce, and therefore that became a challenge. And so we've seen that awareness creation on specifications, on standards and training, and even provision of equipment to be able to do sampling, to do testing, to be able to confirm that the produce being sold is safe, does not have aflatoxin and other toxins, is something that can then make them trade better, get their products accessed. And all this calls for a major policy solution where it was quite clear that it's important to develop a harmonized policy and legal framework to address the whole aspects around cross-border trade that would even include things like payment systems, banking, mobile banking, and all those other aspects that I have discussed that then would slowly start graduating the informal cross-border traders to the formal trade ecosystems. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I wish you all the best, and may God bless you all. Thank you very much.